Hi, I'm Steve Parker, co-founder, head brewer at Fidens Brewing Company. Today we're going to talk about some hops. Really excited to start this new series on beer education. So this is the first episode of the series. We'll be talking about all of our processes and what we do at Fidens in the coming months. But today we're really going to focus on hops. We wait till the beer has hit terminal gravity, which means fermentation is completely over, and then we add the hops cold side, dry hopping, and it really adds flavor and aroma to the beer. And obviously, we like hops here. We use a lot of hops here. Traditionally, brewers will sprinkle in throughout the boil, throughout the kettle. We don't add too much in the kettle, a little bit for bittering at the beginning. Everything then is whirlpooled, and then the majority of the hops are on the cold side of the process. So the primary benefits is just enhancing that aroma and that flavor of the beer. We taste all of our beers pre-dry hopped, and for most of the time they taste pretty similar. But once you add those dry hops, it changes the flavor, aroma, and the color of the beer drastically. And obviously, the more hops that you use to a certain point, the more that enhances. So at Fidens, we ferment all of our beers at 72 until the beer is terminal. Once the beer is terminal, we wait 2 days, and then we soft crash. So what we mean by soft crash is we take the beer from 72 to 65. We harvest the yeast, and then we dry hop over 2 separate days, equal parts. For most of Fidens beers, we always select one hop to kind of be the power chord, we call it, or the standout hop. And so, for example, if we're going to say Citra is the power chord hop that we're using, on day 1, it would be at 50% of the dry hop would be all Citra, and then on day 2, we would take our accent hops and then we would divide them up on how we think it should be for that beer. The contact time, we don't like to let hops sit on beer for very long. 2 days usually, then we start 2 days warm, then we start cold crash. We let it go 2 days at 32, and then we transfer that beer into the bright after that. We feel that a shorter contact time, you get really all you need from those hops without getting any of the things you do not want. Citra is a big hop that we use hot and cold. Probably the other most popular hops at Fidens is Nelson, for sure. I'm a huge Nelson fan. I think it's probably my favorite hop. It can go in about every single style. Mosaic is another one that we use. The crop that we have this year is fantastic. A little bit goes a long way. We use Galaxy. That's another hop that's so pungent, but a little bit goes a long way. And then really also any of the New Zealand crops, we use all those hops in dry hopping as well. So at Fidens, we use a hop doser. So it is a contraption, stainless steel contraption that sits on top of the fermenter, and we can add the hops to it, seal it, and CO2 purge it, and then we purge it, and then we make it to the same pressure of the tank, and we can open that tank. And really, with that hop doser, we do not need to technically open the tank during dry hopping. So that is one of the most important pieces of equipment that we have for dry hopping. I think dry hopping in general is you got to find out what hops work best for what you're looking for. I mean, when we first opened, we would try these hops, and some hops are star hops and that are super pungent, and some are accent hops. So I really think it's finding what works for your system, what you want those star hops to be, and what those accent hops to be. A lot of times you would try to dry hop with certain hops, and they just don't have that star power to be the main show in a beer. So that's one thing. And then just avoiding oxygen as much as possible, which is why we got that hop doser. Like I said, technically don't have to open our tank, especially for any beer, but for these highly hop beers, oxygen is absolute killer. Will kill all your flavor, aroma, everything. So limiting oxygen and just really knowing your hops, knowing censoring your hops. We only use fresh bags for dry hopping. Anything that has been opened before only goes in the hot side. So we cut open a bag, we smell it, and then we're really looking for that hop to, as soon as you cut it open, that it's just punching you in the face. And if something is off with that hop, we will use a hot side. Those are kind of the main things with our cellar team as we're censoring stuff to go into the kettle. Because if something is off with that hop, it's especially on the cold side, it's going to transfer into the taste. Hot side, it can kind of, through fermentation and stuff, it does some kind of magical thing. You don't sense it, but on the cold side, you absolutely. I think dry hopping, I mean, 10 years ago, I think 3 pounds per barrel was a lot. Now it's just, I feel brewers, we have to push it more and more and more because the guest tastes, the threshold is just pushed every single year of how much flavor and how much those hops we can do. So we're always trying to figure out ways to enhance flavor and enhance that stuff through dry hopping techniques. And so that is like the biggest thing I've noticed, even in our going on 6 years in September. I mean, when we first started to now, our dry hopping rates are a lot more. There is a point of, adding too much and it doesn't really do anything or it can hurt the beer. So it's that delicate balance of finding that threshold of enough hops. Because I mean, even when we tested sensory, we can taste beers that aren't dry hopped as highly as you can tell. So we're constantly trying to push that threshold to make a better beer for the guests. I came from a home brewing background. That's how I started. The biggest thing, there's two things. One, invest in cold side equipment. So really invest in maybe a conical. They sell the homebrew conical fermenters. I think that is probably the biggest investment you could do. That way you can dry hop under pressure. You can dry hop, do closed dry hops, closed transfers, and then the second thing is oxygen. So having that conical really helps you not have oxygen touch that beer. And I think that's the hardest thing when I first started homebrewing was a lot of times as a home brewer you don't have the equipment to limit oxygen. It's tough. Making really good homebrew beer is hard. I mean, making beer is hard in general, but homebrew beer is very hard. I came from sensory, huge. When we first opened, again, going through some bags of hops. And when we first opened, we were spot. We're lucky enough now to contract our hops, so I know exactly what is going to each and every one of these beers. But when you are small or just open and you got a spot hop, it's just really making sure you're censoring. There's been some beers where we put hops in, and I was like, God, this is terrible. And then we ended up having to dump it. So it's just really being keen with that sensory with hops. And then sourcing, talk to other brewers, talk to people in the industry, talk to your hop reps. I mean, we work a lot with our hop reps. I tell them what I'm looking for, and now they know as what Fidens wants. So when I call up Yakima Chief and I say, hey, I'm looking for a hop like this, they send me a couple hops, and then I usually get a couple, we'll test them out, and then we'll go that way. But for the most part, I mean, for our big hops, Citra we're lucky enough to contract a whole lot of Citra, which means that we are the only people in the country or world that have that lot of Citra. Nobody else has that lot of Citra, so that's really cool. Kind of gives us a uniqueness to our product. But just sensory is so important as a brewer. The one thing that I would like to share to brewers, home brewers, or whatever is like you got to do what works for your system. There's been a lot of times where we've done collabs with people and we tried to brew the beer and it just didn't work for our system. Everybody's system's different. So do what works with you. And really it's trial and error. I mean, don't be afraid to dump bad beer. I mean, that's the name of the game. I know it sucks and it's money going down the drain, but reputation means more. Putting out a quality product. It's just trial and error, find out what works, experiment. It takes time. I mean, like I said, I've homebrewed for 2.5 years, and then so it's almost 8.5 years of brewing, and I'm still learning every single day. So experiment, try new things out, and do what works for your system. Thank you for listening to this episode about dry hopping. Looking forward to talking more about beer and our process at Fidens in future episodes.